Hello there, welcome to the channel. This is Nerd.World, where I explore everything nerdy that crosses my desk. In today's episode, as you know from clicking on the title, this is about the Zat'nik'tel or Zat Gun, the general all-purpose sidearm issued mostly to the Jafar by the Goa'uld. Before we get started, please like, share, subscribe, comment down below. Tell me what you think about this particular weapon. Do you remember it from Stargate? Because if you watch Stargate, I can't imagine you don't. It was one of the most ubiquitous weapons in the series, used by various different factions, not just the Goa'uld, because the Goa'uld, and to quote General O'Neill, were damn litterbugs. They just left stuff everywhere. They mass-produced these things to the point where they were just the equivalent of a general everyday revolver that just happens to exist. There were millions of these things scattered across the galaxy. Before we properly get into it, I just want to take the time to plug my sponsor, Relentless Rebels, who sent me this Wolf class bracelet, which I think I have mentioned before. There's a link in the description below, as they focus primarily on Viking style jewelry and other such things. If that's something you think you might like, visit their website, have a look around, see what you like. If you like anything, when you reach checkout, use the promo code NERD20 to get a 20% discount. It will seriously help the channel, and it gets you 20% off something you might like. With that said, let's get started. As I said before, this was the general standard issue sidearm used by the infantry of the Goa'uld Empire, the Jafar. Although the weapon was on occasion also used by the Goa'uld, but they favoured more elegant weapons such as the hand device or other such things. The weapon overall had a relatively serpentine appearance, and let's face it, it kind of looked like something else too. It was actually meant to resemble a Goa'uld symbiote, generally speaking, with its sort of arched neck and sort of splayed head. The weapon emitted a blue energy and was described as a less powerful version of the staff weapon, but nonetheless still deadly. But I think I dispute that claim. You really think about the staff weapon. The staff weapon seemed to be very inconsistent in just how strong it was. I saw staff weapons sometimes hit a tree and blow off a few splinters, and yet in Children of the Gods we see Teal'cfire's weapon and it blows a massive meter-wide hole in a thick stone wall. And we can assume that was some variation of the settings capable, but it wasn't. It was very inconsistent. The Zat'nik'tel was very, very straightforward in what it did, mostly. It had no variable settings. There was no way to manually change the setting of the weapon. It had a set function. It was probably possible to physically open it up and change what it did, but that required advanced, probably engineering knowledge of Goa'uld tech, which I don't have, so I couldn't do it. In its safe position, the weapon will be lowered so that it's relatively flat, like a sort of somewhat coiled serpent. When activated and taken out of its safe mode by pressing a button on the side, the neck of the weapon would raise up, more like that of, say, a cobra. It would then, when fired, emit this blue energy. This, in a single hit, was meant to cause intense physical pain and possibly lead to unconsciousness, although again throughout the show that was a little inconsistent, with it sometimes being shown as a general stun weapon. So if there were variations of this weapon, it was never explicitly stated, but sometimes you shoot someone and they seem to just lose consciousness, and that could be their pain response overwhelming them and them not being able to remain conscious due to the sheer amount of pain. But it was physically described as a weapon that causes physical pain with a single shot. The second shot almost invariably will kill the target. There has to be some factors thought of here concerning mass. Would it work the same on an elephant as it would on a person? Or on a whale? Or would a rat be killed instantly by the first shot? So, whatever. The third shot, though, actually disintegrates the body, which, when you think about the kind of energy required to destroy something with the physical vaporize an object with the physical mass of a human being, is pretty intense. And that makes me wonder if this weapon actually had a greater reserve power than a staff weapon. Because staff weapons couldn't do that. They were just a general explosive. I mean, they are two different types of weapon, but you're still talking about a considerable amount of energy. The weapon wasn't continuing to discharge when this happened. Now, there could have been a build-up of energy in your body from the first 2 hits, but as the weapon was not a continuous stream in the 3rd shot, all the energy needed to destroy you must be already placed into or be discharged into your body with that 3rd shot. You've got to assume it's a cumulative effect, but even with cumulative effect sort of factored in, it takes a lot of power to disintegrate a 6-foot high human being with just an average body mass index. Now, I'm not doing the math on it, but I know it's a lot. I might do the math and put something up on the screen when I've done. It might take me a few days, but I'll get there. Or Google it. The weapon, generally speaking, again, was used by a variety of factions, although it was, to my knowledge, only produced by the Goa'uld. But it was seen to be used by other affiliates of the Goa'uld, such as bounty hunters and other such individuals. They would occasionally also fall into the hands of the Goa'uld's enemies. Now, this weapon, in its basic configuration, had been around for approximately 5,000 years, meaning that it had changed very little, but they'd also made a hell of a lot of these damn things, and obviously Goa'uld tech lasts a long time, so probably the weapons built 5,000 years ago, if kept properly charged and just with a basic level of maintenance, probably still work. So there's a lot, like I say, there's a lot of them, and they're readily available across the Goa'uld Empire by both the military and probably by civilian assets by this point. And again, they were used by enemy factions, with many of them falling into the hands of the Tauri. Now, despite being one of the most prevalent weapons in the galaxy, especially by the 20th and 21st centuries, the weapon did have its drawbacks. For a start, it affected different creatures and different technology in different ways. A general human, Jafar, Goa'uld, Wraith, it'll affect him more or less the same way. But as I said, the larger or smaller the creature, the different it will affect it. It was possible to build, by this point, armor that could completely absorb the energy effect of this weapon. It had no kinetic impact. For example, a bullet or a staff weapon, a bullet in particular, uses a lot of kinetic energy, but if you're shot with a staff weapon, you're knocked flying, as well as getting a big gaping hole in your chest. The Zat'nik'tel seemed to have no kinetic push, so that was that limiting factor, in that it had no belt behind it. So if you needed to blow open a door or get out of a tight situation, this weapon was useless. It didn't really affect metals or other such things, and would just simply disperse the energy like an electrical discharge across them, which could then come back on you if you're aboard a ship or within a confined space of some description. Now, of course, you wouldn't fire a gun in those situations either, but this, in all probability, a bullet's just going to pancake across on the wall. This might actually flow back at you. It affects liquids different to how it affects solids. It was affected a little more by the environment. It did work perfectly well in space as well as in atmosphere. It was actually in atmospheres where it probably had more trouble. If it was a particularly energized atmosphere, the weapon was less likely to work. You wouldn't try and discharge the thing in an environment like Neptune or Venus, for that matter, assuming you could survive those environmental pressures, which, got to assume the Goa'uld could build a spacesuit that could do it. These limiting factors were a problem, but for me, one of the biggest glaring weaknesses of the weapon was the sheer lack of versatility. A staff weapon, you knew what you were getting. You've got some, at least I've always assumed, again, not really shown, but it seemed to demonstrate an ability to have a very powerful hit or a less powerful hit. That's better than a gun. A gun, generally, if you're talking about an assault rifle, you might have the ability to change between single shot, auto, full auto, whatever variations. Guns aren't really my thing, but you've got those sorts of adaptations you can have to the weapon. You can also choose where you shoot someone. You get your staff weapon. You set it to a lower power, you shoot someone in the foot, they're not running away, but they're not going to die either, but they've also probably been most likely neutralized as a continuing threat, and even if they are willing to still put up a fight, they've been severely handicapped. Or you can choose to shoot them in the face and blow their head off. Or you can turn the weapon settings up and blow them in half. Shoot them wherever you want then. So with these weapons you've got some versatility and some ability to manually control. Again, with a rifle, you can choose full auto and just spray a person with bullets, most likely killing them. You can set it to single shot, shoot them in the kneecap, disable them. Or you can shoot them in the face, kill them, most likely. you don't have these options with the Zat'nik'tel. It's basically this little nasty weapon that's as much about fear. The fact that the first setting just does nothing but cause pain says to me this is intended as a weapon of intimidation, not efficiency. Yes, it's very impressive what it can do, and it's terrifying, but not really to the person that's being shot with it immediately. Yes, it's very painful, but then you're dead, and then you're vaporized. Who's that for? Is that just clean up and getting rid of a body easily? No, that's showing off to the crowd how powerful you are, that you're a god to them, that their husband, their father, their sister, their mother, their uncle, their aunt, their local leader, the soldier has just been vaporized. They're gone. You can't even bury them. Don't rise up. And that to me is where the weapon's main strength is as well. It did its job, but it also was quite efficient. But if you were trying to take out a force of incoming soldiers and you were shooting at them, chances are the weapon's not overly accurate. The actual speed of the pulses, as you can track it with your eye, is indicating that the speed of the weapon is, the velocity rather, of the projectile is quite low, and therefore if you're shooting at something that's sufficiently far enough away, they can probably get out of the way. I mean, they might not have a lot of time, it might only be a fraction, but then again, if you only hit them once, you've not killed them, you've hurt them. If you don't shoot them again, a bit later they're getting up again, and they're going to carry on after you, and now they're pissed at you. And I don't know exactly how long after you've been shot by Zat'nik'tel to be hit by it a second time it actually kills you. Is it 10 minutes? Is it an hour? Is it a day? Again, it's a little ambiguous. Is range a factor? Again, is body mass a factor? All these things very likely are. And your average Jafar on the battlefield might not be able to factor these things in a battlefield situation. Now, again, these are the secondary weapon. As a result, they are often carried by the commanders. They're sometimes carried on their arm or on their side, and they might not have a staff weapon. Or the ones who have staff weapons, the general serpent guards, Horus guards, whatever, they might not bother having a Zat'nik'tel. They'll only have their staff weapon. So, as I said, it has strengths and it has weaknesses. It is, however, a very beautiful little weapon which makes quite a satisfying mechanical clunk noise when activated or deactivated, which I was quite liked. And that's my review, the evaluation and breakdown of the Zat'nik'tel, or Zat Gun as it was lovingly dubbed. The weapon was actually quite impressive, quite powerful, and sometimes even favoured by SGC personnel over a general sidearm, mainly because, despite its limitations, it did work in 90%, 99% probably of environments. The likelihood of you being in an environment where the weapon wouldn't work, for example, particularly energized or adverse atmosphere, would very likely be the kind of environment a human being couldn't survive in anyway, and you'd be dead, so it's irrelevant whether the weapon would work, you'd be dead. The fact that it didn't run out of ammunition, its power cell was very long lasting. As I said, these things could be centuries old and still work. It's likely that a single power cell could handle thousands of shots, which is more than what your average handgun, your average semi-automatic pistol, probably 10 to 15 rounds. A revolver, an average of 6 rounds. Compare that to thousands of shots. Yes, they were probably shorter range. Yes, they lacked the kinetic hit. Yes, you didn't have the same versatility of choice with the weapon, but you weren't going to run out of ammo. You could just keep firing. You got an enemy coming at you, just keep shooting them, keep firing into the wave of oncoming infantry. And that was one of the main pluses of the weapon. It was also, again, intimidating. No one wants to be shot with a weapon that causes intense agony and pain, which I should point out is eerily reminiscent to weapons used in other sci-fi franchises, particularly Star Trek and the Mirror Universe, which I'm a bit of a fanboy of, where you've got the agonizers and the agony booths, which seem to have a very similar effect of overwhelming your nervous system with pain, as mostly as an intimidation factor as much as a punishment. So, bringing this to an end, please like, share, subscribe, comment down below. Don't forget to check out my sponsor, Relentless Rebels, and I'll see you in the next video. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you, and bye-bye.